Ah, greetings, B-movie aficionados.
Hello, welcome to A Couple of Flicks. I am Tristan.
And I'm Nick.
Unfortunately, Zach couldn't make it for this episode, but he'll be back for the next one. So,
Yes.
yeah.
It's got a busy, spooky month.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's always sometimes it's tricky. So, but I guess this episode is part one of our Halloween special. I guess for
Yeah, kinda. Yeah.
yeah, we'll just go with it. Yeah. So,
Yep.
and like right before we started recording, I mentioned that I had a stiff neck. So I guess that in a way that kind of fits in with the theme of this episode, since it's about stiffness.
Yep.
So
dead things.
Yes, specifically, yeah, we're talking about the George Romero Living Dead trilogy. So the 60s, 70s, and 80s pictures. So, which I've watched these movies many times. So, but I hadn't watched them for a while, recently. So it was nice to revisit them.
Yeah, I think I've actually, when we first said we were going to do this, I thought I only saw Dawn of the Dead, but after watching Night of the Dead, I'm pretty sure I've seen that as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was lots of it rung a bell, and I don't know. could also be that I was just, fairly straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like all the plots of all three of these movies have sort of been recycled since these films have come out.
Yeah.
Also, so there might be some deja vu. I know that I've experienced that from time to time with these types of films. So, but yeah, but okay. I guess before we talk about that, was there anything that you watched recently that you wanted to bring up or talk about? So,
yeah, I saw two things over the week. One sucked and one was good.
all right.
The shitty one was Freaky. Have you heard about that one?
I think I have, but I don't know what it is or what it's about. Like it doesn't. Yeah, I'm not even remembering.
Yeah, it came out in the last year or two or something. I don't really know when. A couple of years at least.
Okay.
Body swap movie, like Freaky Friday. It takes place. Yeah, it takes place on Friday the 13th. This movie does.
Nice.
And the bodies that get swapped are a teenage girl and a serial killer, like Michael Myers type characters.
So suddenly she turns into a Michael Myers killer
who
like walks all crazy and kills people and stuff.
And the Michael Myers character turns into a teenage girl. And he's there, and that guy is played by Vince Vaughn.
Oh wow. That's funny.
Yeah. Because it's more like a horror comedy, but it wasn't really funny.
Oh, that bites. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fairly straightforward. It was a Blumhouse production, so it was
okay.
What you'd get out of that.
Yeah, I think I saw the title and then it just faded into the filmography of the Blumhouse. Just because so many of those titles, like, so many of them are a blur to me at this point. Like,
yeah, and he didn't act as well as Jack Black doing the teenage girl in Jumanji. He just he wasn't as good.
Okay,
I like Vince Vaughn in a lot of things, but
yeah, but this was definitely not Vince Vaughn's finest hour. It sounds like
no.
Ugh.
Could tell he was trying, but maybe a little too hard. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. I guess I won't rush to check that one out anytime soon. Then, but I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, I wouldn't. I think I saw it free on Amazon though. So I mean,
okay. What would you say was better, that or Cocaine Bear?
Cocaine Bear.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Then there you go. That should tell you everything.
Yeah. So we're rating them off now. What's better, that or Cocaine Bear?
Yeah. All right. The latest horror oddity pictures or whatever.
And then the good movie I saw was Talk to Me.
What? Oh, Talk to Me. Oh,
Yep.
oh, nice. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, it was good. A24. I mean, I assume it's Australian. Everyone in it was Australian.
I think so. Yeah. I definitely like. I saw the trailer for it, which I told myself that I wouldn't do with an A24 movie, that I wouldn't watch the trailers anymore. But this one I did end up eventually watching the trailer just because I figured like probably not going to watch it till it comes out like on streaming or sometime afterward anyway. So I just did it that way, which in the past that's worked pretty well, but yeah, this time I was just like, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely want to see it though. The whole idea of it sounds really kind of creepy, and I could see that being done well. So
yeah, it was good. It was really good. I liked it a lot.
yeah, nice. Well, I marathoned all the Friday the 13th movies, including the remake. Yeah.
Oh, how'd that go?
I guess it went all right. I mean, a lot of them were worse than I remembered them being. Like the second and third one were like those were really tough to get there. I really I don't know. Like that series starts off really slow, and it does eventually pick up, but it takes a while, So yeah, like the third film is pretty much just nothing happening other than people dying for the most part. Like it's like people just hanging out in the middle of nowhere. Like there's not even yeah, not even a summer camp or anything. I mean, sort of, but not really at all. Because like it follows the second film, so it's got to have like the flashbacks and stuff. And then as it goes along, it gets more and more supernatural until it gets like so supernatural that it barely even feels like a Jason movie anymore because it's about like psychic children and like at one point there's like a whole body swap thing going on in those,
oh no. Oh boy.
It goes like all hidden shocker style, where
yeah,
Jason goes to hell. It's so dumb. But that one I actually did enjoy though, just because I remember liking it as a kid, even though it's just like the dumbest fucking film ever.
Did you do Freddy vs. Jason?
I watched that one too. That one was dumb as hell. Kelly Rowland was probably the best part of that one. Actually, I still enjoyed it. It was like really, really stupid. A lot of the best scenes in that one actually were the dream sequences. Which is interesting. There weren't. It's like it didn't feel like there were enough of them, but at the same time, it felt like they were like half the movie. So I don't know how that works. Yeah. And then I even watched the remake of Friday the 13th, the 13th Platinum Dunes. What do you call it? Michael Bay. I watched that version too. So.
Oh really? I didn't.
Yeah.
Did I know there was a remake?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure actually.
Did
you ever see the remake? Yeah.
No, I only seen the only one I've seen was the original.
Oh, okay. Well. And I mean, it's not really. I mean, most of the Friday the 13th movies aren't really that great anyway. And the remake it's very traditional, actually. That's the thing that's most surprising about it. It's kind of like a traditional slasher movie. It's got a couple good sex scenes. That's about it. Which I know usually I don't praise a movie for that kind of thing, but I don't know. Those ones were actually pretty well done. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't that special, it was. Yeah, I'm like forgetting a lot of what even happened in it aside from the kill scenes. Pretty much the only cool thing was like the underground tunnel stuff. Like, yeah. Anyway, I could go on and on about those movies, but I don't really need to.
Yeah.
I will say though, upon this rewatch, I'd say I've grown to appreciate number 7 more. I have to say, The New Blood. That's the one that has the psychic girl in it, and like that one is kind of annoying because it's not really gruesome like the other ones are. They actually kind of take out a lot of like the worst stuff in it for whatever reason. So that one's kind of more atmosphere oriented, but I don't know. That one has grown on me. I used to think it was really dumb, but now I don't mind it as much. The makeup's not bad. So
Okay.
yeah. Anyway,
I'll have to go through them.
yeah, go for it.
I don't think I've even seen any of the Nightmare on Elm Streets. Any of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I would say, I'd say the Nightmare on Elm Street series is more interesting overall, but for the Friday the 13th series, it's got its highlights. The problem with it is that it goes really, really slow. Like, it's not really even until like the third film that Jason gets like the hockey mask thing going on,
Right,
and that doesn't even happen until like toward the end too.
Yeah,
So
I remember
like,
when I watched the first one, I was like, "Where the fuck's the hockey mask?"
yeah, no. Instead, you get what's her name, Betsy Palmer. I forget what her name is. Going ballistic, getting kicked in the groin, and yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the first film is all right. I don't mind it. It's kind of fun in its own way, but it's wicked slow though. Like all of them are just wicked slow. Well, not all of them, just the first three specifically. So, but anyway, I don't know. I already marathoned the Halloween movies earlier, like last year, I think. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah. At some point, I'll probably marathon the Nightmare on Elm Street movies as well, but not yet. So
yeah.
All right. So I guess I guess let's go ahead and talk about these movies now, I suppose. So
all right, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen these movies so many times we probably don't even need to look up the plot summaries, to be honest. So
okay.
But so I guess the first film in the Living Dead trilogy was made in the late 60s, like 67, I think, or 68, something like that.
Yep. I think 68.
Yeah. Yeah, super low budget. I mean, I think it was only made for like a little over like $100,000 or something like that.
Oh wow. That even surprises me for 68 money.
Yeah, it's pretty low. Like they've definitely like guerrilla filmmaking, at least for its time. Night of the Living Dead, which I think most people have probably seen by this point, I would imagine. I mean, it's in the public domain, so
yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Did you watch this one this time? Did you watch it in color or black and white?
I decided to watch the black and white version, but I have seen the colorized version. So,
okay. I don't know if I've seen the color version. No. Yeah, I watched in black and white this time too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the colorized version is kind of weird. Like, I remember that in the version I watched, the TV segments, like when they were watching on TV, were in black and white, but then like everything else that was happening was in color, which kind of threw me off a little bit. Like, because they're like looking at the TV and suddenly it's like a black and white image, and yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. They didn't have color TVs.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. Of course, the follow-up to this film is so saturated with color, it almost feels like it was colorized.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and really, I mean, if you haven't seen this film yet, it's usually playing on TV like around Halloween anyway, so it's pretty easy to find. You could even just go down to the dollar store and probably buy a copy of it. Like you could literally find it. It's on YouTube. I mean, but apparently that had to do with like a copyright discrepancy or something like that.
Yeah, because
the
Dawn of the Dead was not nowhere on any streaming for copyright reasons.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that one
complete opposites.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Apparently the person who owns the rights to Dawn of the Dead is like he has like really high standards for like distribution rights and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I read he refuses to let it on any streaming platform.
Yeah, I don't get it, but it's on YouTube, so whatever, I guess.
Hmm.
And, um, but yeah. So you said that you had seen this one before,
I
or
think so. Maybe. It seemed
yeah,
familiar. Definitely after watching it. I didn't think I had going in, but after watching it, I was like, okay, a lot of this seems familiar.
yeah.
So pretty sure I've seen it at least twice now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I the first time I saw this movie was when I was like wicked young. Like this, or it was I think this and like maybe Shockwaves or one of those movies. Those were like the first two zombie movies I ever saw. Um, so, but yeah, this one scared me a lot more than Shockwaves, though. Actually,
Hmm.
so
This is one of the first, or the first, right? Like they usually say.
yeah. I mean, it's
That's what
basically
people
the
say.
first.
Yeah.
It may as well be. I mean, I know that there was like a Bela Lugosi movie called like White Zombie or something like that, I but I think this is the first one that actually kind of took the idea of like a zombie plague. I think that was
Mhm.
more like a just a like, individual like voodoo zombie type
Mm.
of thing, like happening to like one person or something. I never saw White Zombie, so I can't say, but this is more like a plague situation basically. So
Yep.
um and actually, I guess part of the reason I thought it would be fun to talk about these movies is because we talked about the Crazies at one point by the same director, George Romero. So
Oh,
yeah,
I
and you could,
forgot he did that. Yeah, I didn't.
yeah,
Or did I even know when we watched it? I don't know. I don't remember if I knew or not.
I'm not
I'm
sure.
sure we
I may have
mentioned it.
brought it up. I
Sure,
can't
I'm
remember.
sure. Yeah, I'm sure we mentioned it. But
Yeah, but I mean, after watching these three movies, you could sort of see how that was by the same director. I would imagine, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
interesting director.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's got like a very he's got an angry voice, I would say. I think I that's what I said when we talked about the Crazies is it's clear to me that like he's the type of director who puts a lot of thought into his stories, like giving them some type of meaning. And I would say like out of the three films in this trilogy, like I'd say Night of the Living Dead, as far as its message goes, and as far as what it's like trying to say, like probably stands the test of time the best of the three. Only because like it's about like how like in an out of control apocalypse scenario, the thing that's more likely to kill us will be ourselves. Basically, that seems to be kind of the running theme of all three of these movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I'd say this movie that's kind of the core theme because pretty much the reason all the characters die in this movie is due to very human issues.
hmm
So, um, like making poor decisions or whatnot. So
yeah. There's always, in these there's like a rational character and then like the emotional one trying to. They both present good arguments for either way too. Like
yes,
in Night of the Living Dead, there's the whole argument of going down to the cellar. Like it's a simple premise of, when you're stuck in a house where you want to hold up for this situation, you go down to the cellar where there's one entrance. Sure, that sounds good in theory, but there's also only one exit, which would be right through the gate, right through where they'd be coming through. And the main character, um, forget his name now. And
oh, Ben.
Ben, yes. And he's like, yeah, but that's a death trap down there. We can escape through all these other ways. And that other kid too that was down there with him kind of sides with Ben
Yeah,
eventually as well, saying, "Yeah, come on, Mr. Cooper."
yeah,
That
I
kid
mean,
was funny. His act, I don't know if it's just '60s acting or just his acting was particularly stiff, but
yeah. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say the acting in this movie generally is. I wouldn't say the acting in any of these movies honestly was all that great. Um,
yeah.
but really, I mean, the emoting, I guess, is kind of more sort of what's memorable about them, because like yeah, like you said, that it does kind of become sort of a power struggle where Ben, like you said, he's more calm and collected, and he's coming across as more confident, which obviously with this kid, he's probably looking at the Cooper character as sort of more like a father figure who's stubborn and isn't listening to reason. Which is kind of why why it's sort of, I mean, in the end, Cooper, in some ways, actually, yeah, like you indicate, like presents like the stronger argument as in the long term, but in some ways, Ben ends up also being the more resourceful of the two. So,
Yeah.
so basically, like, because they get into a power struggle, it doesn't end up working out, because they don't work together,
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but what were you about to say?
I was just gonna say I find that whatever the female character too,
Barbara.
Barbara, I didn't like her at all. Just because she was comatose the entire time.
Yeah.
Like she was like shell shocked, I guess is.
Basically,
I mean,
inoperable.
it's a response that would definitely happen, but in a movie, it's kind of annoying that she was doing it throughout, literally up until her death.
Yeah.
And I also found it funny too that like he just beat the shit out of her. Like in one of the first scenes, in one of the first scenes, she was, I don't know, trying to escape to get to her brother that died or something, and he just smacked her out like
yeah. I mean, she's hysterical throughout the course of, throughout the first part of the film. I mean, the movie, it is kind of a relief when she doesn't end up being the main character, admittedly.
Yes.
Because
definitely.
Ben is undoubtedly the main character in the film, but the film sort of leads you to think that she might be the main character at first.
Because it's the first ones we meet and how we get introduced to the house, the whole situation.
Yeah. I mean, the film kind of opens sort of almost like Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a way, where it's like a brother and sister go to a cemetery, and then like the brother ends up kind of starting to tease his sister, and he does the whole "oh, they're coming to get you, Barbara" type of thing, which gets endlessly quoted and stuff. And there's like a weird,
and it turns out they are actually because there's that one guy in the background that we see throughout that we kind of figure since we know what movie we're watching, and then he's teasing her that, oh, he's coming to get you.
Yeah, and audiences in 1968 weren't expecting this, but this odd fella is stumbling around the cemetery and he points to the guy, and then he randomly starts attacking her, and so then the brother fends him off and ends up getting killed in the process, basically. And then from there on out, the film for the next 20 minutes is mostly just her trying to escape, but she's in a state of shock, so she botches her escape pretty badly. She gets into a car, and the guy's right outside. He busts the window open immediately, but she does manage to,
That is one thing I noticed about this movie too, is that the zombies were more resourceful.
Oh yeah.
Like he straight up picked up he knew he couldn't break through the window, so he picked up a rock and smashed it, and throughout the zombies kind of pick up utensils or whatever. I don't know if utensils is one word, but objects to help break through the walls and shit.
Yep. That's actually one thing about these three zombie movies that's different from a lot of zombie movies that a lot of people forget about these movies, is that the zombies in these movies actually do know how to, at the very least, carry weapons, and they do sometimes use them. In this movie and in Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, I can think of scenes where
I'd say Dawn less so. They just have them in their hands, but they don't. I would say Dawn definitely is more generic zombies,
Yeah, definitely.
But zombies in this one were definitely more smart than I thought they would be.
Yes. Oh, most definitely. Actually, probably the most shocking scene, one of the most shocking scenes in the movie, involves a zombie using a weapon. So, Yeah. Which one thing about this movie I gotta give it credit for is like it's actually not very gory. It does manage to keep it to a minimum for the
Yeah.
most part. Like it's mostly only at the end when you start seeing a few little gruesome things here and there. But whenever this played on television back in the day, they actually usually didn't cut it much at all,
Mm.
really. Um,
Did this go out
but
to theaters too, or was it just?
well, when it first came out, it was in theaters, but it's because it ended up falling into the public domain. That meant that it basically they basically had the rights to also just play it on television whenever they wanted.
Oh, did it fall into it quickly then? I thought it might have just been a time thing. Okay.
Yeah, it fell into it pretty much immediately. Because I guess
Mm.
the copyright that they used, it was like reused from another title that the original title, but because they reused it for this title, it meant that they weren't able to actually gain the rights to it back, since the title that this was attached to was already attached to that title. So it basically was a title discrepancy, which is the reason why they couldn't actually get the rights to this movie. So it's crazy to think he didn't actually make any money from this, but that's what happened.
Oh,
Um,
okay, yeah. Hmm.
yeah. Um, but yeah, and eventually she escapes into a farmhouse and does the usual, like the phone doesn't work, and but before she ends up drawing too much attention to herself from the zombies outside, Ben, who ends up being our hero, shows up, and he's just kind of a stowaway. Like he came out of nowhere. He's from what we kind of quickly gathered, has been sort of dealing with this zombie outbreak for like a couple hours now by that point. And he gives this pretty intense sort of play by play on this pretty horrific sort of truck accident situation
Yeah.
that he gets involved in. Yeah.
His story was good. And then like of course we get Barbara's story, which was
Yeah.
just because he's actually like his acting was good. Like of all
Yeah.
of them, he was a good actor, but everyone else was shit. And like her story and
Yeah.
depiction like was just so bad. And
Yeah.
also like her story wasn't that great in general, and just the way she told it was awful. And it was just
Yeah.
the
Her
juxtaposition
recollection.
between both of them was just like stark and like so different. I was
Yeah.
like, all right, this guy's cool. He just saw like this huge pile up, a giant gas truck drove through like a 30 zombies and and all this stuff, and he got away, but just in the nick of time. And then she's just crying about
Yeah.
her brother that got beat up by one zombie.
Yeah. And she like bursts into tears while she's talking about it.
Yeah, and this
All
is
this
still
stuff.
like she goes from being comatose to telling the story and then back being to comatose. Like, all right, lady, what's your
Yeah.
problem?
Yeah. Like occasionally she'll like say like a vague thing about like the time or whatever. Like, oh, what time is it? Or something throughout the course of the film. She's mostly useless until the end. So
Mhm.
um but yeah, and so yeah, he knocks her out, and then and so at some point they do have to kind of fend off a couple zombies who manage to sort of, I mean, there's already a dead body in there anyway, but yeah, they do. I think he does end up having a torch, at least one of them. So
Yeah, they
um
find out they're afraid of fire, I guess. I didn't know that was a
yeah,
thing.
yeah, or at least they don't like it. So
Yeah, so a couple times he throws out burning pieces of furniture just to
yeah,
ward them off. Yeah.
yeah, pretty much.
And a good port, yeah. So then a good portion of this movie is him just boarding up the windows.
Yeah, which makes sense, but that's only kind of a temporary fix. I mean, it doesn't end up working out too well for them, because eventually there's just too many of them. That's the scary thing about these zombies, is that like when it's just like a crowd of them, it's not too bad, but when the
Yeah.
crowd gets bigger and bigger, eventually you can't fend them off anymore. And that's kind of what like, so they stay there for some time, and eventually they discover that there's already some folks that are hiding in the basement, and it's a mother, father, their daughter, and then a random teenage couple. And Cooper essentially makes basically the point that I just made about how big, massive zombies, how big a problem that would be, but if you're in the basement and you're not drawing attention to yourself, then then it'd be a little bit easier to evade them in the long run. So he does make a good argument, like you mentioned before, but Ben, he's insistent on holding onto the radio. He's insistent on boarding up the doors and seeing what else is in the house. Maybe possibly trying to escape. I mean, he's got bigger ambitions. He doesn't want to sit in one place. He wants to actually leave.
Yeah. For the most part, yeah.
Yeah. Which
he does say. I mean, he does say that they'll come for us eventually if we just hunker down. But then they get a TV going and like it says that there are safe spots in the teenage couples from the area. So they say, oh yeah, we know where that safe spot is. We just need to refuel. We need to refuel this this truck of yours because there's I guess houses had gas stations too back then, or gas.
Well,
pumps.
this one did at least. Yeah, it's a farmhouse. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was just a debacle.
Yeah, agreed. That plan couldn't have gone worse if they had tried.
Yep.
It actually probably went about as bad as it possibly could have.
Yeah. And I'm surprised that Mr. Cooper even helped out a little bit with what he did in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
I'm not surprised at the end what he did because that's his character, but
yeah, he was bound to be shitty eventually.
Yeah. Chucking Molotov cocktails out the window to scare him off, make a pathway.
Yeah. I mean, that made sense. They decide to try and do that. And, what's the teenager's name? I forget, but his
Johnny?
Johnny. Okay. Yeah. Oh, wait, no, that's the brother's name. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. But he's played by the dude that was in one of the Return of the Living Dead movies. I remember that much. Or no, I'm thinking of something else. I'm thinking of the remake. Oh my God, I'm getting so confused. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I have it pulled up here.
Oh yeah.
Shoot, it's not even on the first list.
Yeah, he's not a very important character, it turns out. Even though when you first meet him, you think he's going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
It's weird. It has a weird casting list, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think maybe it's like it had to do with like order of appearance or something like that.
Tony Todd isn't in this either, and it says he is.
Oh, you think that's the remake again? Okay, so
it's conflating them for this, this search.
That's annoying.
I guess.
All right, I think it's Tom and Judy. So yeah, like Tom is gonna go with Ben, but then Judy at the last second decides to go with them. In fact, like she literally says, "I'm going with them," and runs after them and gets in the truck, which is hilarious. I always
that was annoying. I was like, okay,
yeah,
Tom and Judy. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, they already they already ascertained that their time is limited anyway, because at some point one of the zombies does break in through one of the windows and they have to reboard it. So that's going to probably end up happening more and more. So they're like, all right, we may as well get gas now. But yeah, unfortunately, they end up leaking gas, and at one point, one of the Molotov cocktails lights up some of the gas.
It's not even that. It was the torch that Ben was carrying, because he was fending them off with torches, and then it just hilarious. It was so funny how poorly it went after, like, they had to shoot. The keys didn't work that they thought that was labeled the gas key. It didn't work. They shot it off, and then immediately, basically, once they started filling the tank up, they catch the whole fucking truck on fire with that torch Ben was carrying.
yeah. And why did Tom not get out? Is
the final kiss, I guess, or something, because of Judy.
Judy, her shirt was cut, or was caught in the seat or in the belt or whatever.
Okay, yeah, I know I didn't know why that. I thought she was like saying we can still go, or I don't. Yeah, but I know she was like, the reason.
I'm stuck. And so he stays with
Okay.
her, and then the whole thing blows up and they both die.
Yeah.
And to add further insult to injury, Ben barely makes it back inside because Cooper decides to lock the door.
I think that was
So
the
that wasn't
plan. It was the plan to lock the door but not reboard it.
yeah.
But he
Well, that's
doesn't
the
let
thing.
him back in.
He doesn't unlock it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which was the
exactly. He
plan
just
to
decides to
let
go
him
and
back in.
hide.
Yep. Like
Yeah.
a little bitch.
So then Ben, yeah. So he gets popped in the face
Oh
for that
yeah.
one.
He gets the shit beat out of him.
So
It was
so
awesome.
Ben, yeah. So Ben actually like beats up at least like a couple of the people in this farmhouse throughout the course of the movie. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And then you get the great eating scene where the zombies start tearing out their entrails, and it's pretty gnarly. I mean, it definitely leaves a lot to the imagination, but at the same time, like, you do see enough that it's like pretty gross for the late 60s,
Mhm.
like, but
Well, just cooked meat this for them, I guess. Nice barbecued.
yeah, it was probably pretty juicy. Oh, and also the other thing, so the thing about Mr. Cooper is that like, his big issue, like, he has a point about staying in the basement, but the thing that like kind of sabotages that whole plan altogether is the fact that he's keeping his daughter down there, and like, along with his wife. And the problem with that is that his daughter, I mean, you find out early on that his daughter is sick, but it's not until later on in the movie that you find out like how she's sick.
Yeah. She has been bitten.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember if the movie ever says bites if this movie say bites turn people at all. Because the way we're getting information is through radio and TV things. So
yeah. You don't find out on the radio, but you do find out pretty soon that bites do indeed turn people into zombies. And also Ben does say something at one point. He says, after he finds out that Cooper's daughter has been bitten, he pretty much gets defeated, and it's like, oh great, well, who knows what kind of virus she might be carrying, or what kind of disease she might be carrying now if one of those things has bitten her. Like, I forget exactly what he says, but he does say something to indicate like that's not good. And let's see.
They do eventually learn to aim for the head after like most of the movie. They don't pick up on that because they're shooting them in the chest and stuff, and they keep walking. But a radio or news guy says aim for the head, and then they start actually doing that.
Yeah, and it works great. It works better than great. And but unfortunately, Cooper, then he starts getting fixated on getting the gun, because if whoever has the gun is the one in control, right? So he does actually try to steal the gun eventually, which eventually Ben just doesn't take his shit anymore and just straight up shoots him.
Yeah, good. He was like, all right, you know what, fuck you, buddy.
Yeah, pretty much. And this happens around the time the shit really starts hitting the fan. I mean, I think this all happens shortly after the lights go out. And this is about when the zombies start breaking in, and Mr. Cooper's wife, she gets attacked. But this is when Barbara actually manages to snap out of her shock, and actually she does manage to save Mrs. Cooper, who then proceeds to run down into the basement.
She saves Ben too, kind of. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, she actually starts doing stuff
for like 30 seconds. It's like one save for those two people getting they're trying to reboard, and then she snaps out of it and helps them, and
and it's like, okay, sweet, this is what you should be doing. And
then she dies. She gets her killed instantly.
She gets killed immediately, because then unfortunately she sees her brother, and her brother's a zombie now. Yeah, and so she sees him, and she immediately just completely has a mental breakdown. So she doesn't even have time to react to what's happening to her. She just has a mental breakdown while she's getting eaten alive. And she did save Mrs. Cooper, but that doesn't really end up working out either, because she goes down there finds that her husband is getting devoured by their daughter, and then she goes into shock, and then her daughter picks up a jowl, it looked like, and ends up
Yeah,
stabbing her mother to
little
death.
shuffle, whatever those are called. Yeah.
Yeah, which is,
Spade,
probably
maybe.
yeah, something like that. One of the spades, yeah, and probably the second most disturbing scene in the whole film.
Yeah.
With the first being what happens at the very end, I would say. But yeah, so basically everybody's either dead or dying, and Ben decides to just stick to the original plan and hide in the basement. So that ends up working out okay. He takes out the whatever zombies are left over, which, of course everybody's a zombie at that point, and basically stays there and chills. And while that's happening overnight, they do manage to get like the local communities end up managing to get teams of folks together to help deal with the crisis.
Yeah, we see that throughout the movie.
Yeah,
the TVs. And I thought one funny thing, they blame like a Venus probe for the outbreak, because it came around and exploded and extreme radiation or something.
Which is nuts, but that's a cool idea, admittedly.
But also, like, it was the same running theme throughout all three was hell being overflown or over flooded.
Yeah, in the
too many people in hell. But
there's no more room in hell.
Yeah, Ben says it in this, like, it's like something that like his grandparents passed down. That he has a cool little saying too that says that it'll happen. So he says it at least.
Yeah. Like there is always some kind of quasi sort of or semi spiritual moment here and there in these movies, which I always
and
enjoy.
They said it in Day as well.
Oh,
like the pilot guy said it in Day as well. He had a grandma that says that type of stuff too. So it's the same thing. Like, God's taking punishment on us or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a reoccurring theme, So, but yeah, I don't know. In the meantime, these hunters managed to actually take out some of the zombie mass. Maybe not all of it. I mean, it seems like the apocalypse continues throughout the course of these films, but regardless, it does seem like they're at least trying to control the situation. And Ben the next morning manages to actually get out of the basement, and because it seems as though they're all gone.
He's hearing like dogs barking, and I think maybe sirens and people scuttling about and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. But unfortunately, one of the hunters ends up mistaking him for one of the undead, and he gets one right between the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which to me is easily the most shocking moment in the whole film, and really probably the most shocking thing about this whole film, like, is that ending.
Mm-hmm. I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, it takes balls to end a movie that way. It really does.
Yeah.
To just very, very quickly and succinctly just kill off the hero that you've grown the closest to, and not only kill him off. Go on.
That's why I love the Mist. It's why it's one of my, because of the ballsy ending it has.
Yeah.
So I appreciate this ending a lot.
Yeah. I'd say out of like definitely the best, like the strongest aspect of this film is the ending. And it's really haunting. I gotta say, it's like those last images where you see the people with the hooks drag his body out and then put it on the fire and just light it up. Like, it's just
as credits are rolling.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really powerful ending, and like, it is kind of the reoccurring theme throughout these films that it's the humans that are the real threat, and that the zombies are really kind of like secondary to all that. But
we are the Walking Dead.
yeah, pretty much. Like, it's interesting to see a movie this old kind of say something like that. I'd say just about how, like, a person can become so like desensitized to violence that they can eventually like harm other people without even really realizing it, or even like sort of recognizing that that's what they're doing, because they're blinded by, yeah, like there's that. But then like there's also like other ways to read it as well. Like I feel like time has really been pretty kind to Night of the Living Dead. Like all things considered, I mean, it is clearly a very dated 60s movie, but in other, there are ways that I feel like it has retained a good amount of power, you know. So it's not my favorite film in the trilogy, though.
Yeah,
So,
no, I wouldn't.
yeah,
I'd agree with that, but
yeah.
it's also not the worst. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. I could definitely, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. What are your overall thoughts on it?
I thought it was great. Yeah, because I mean, what they say is it's like the first of it's genre
Yeah.
defining for many reasons, and many good reasons too, because it was really well done.
Yes.
Um, I don't know if it was this his first movie or first feature at least.
I don't think it was his very. I think he did like some short works before, but
Yeah,
it was basically his first like official film. Yeah, like
yeah,
his
that's what I
first like
thought.
theatrical film. So he just made it with a group of friends and some Pittsburgh natives, and yeah, just made this cool little iconic work, I would say. So
Yeah, very indie for back in the 60s.
yeah, yeah, basically this was like the Halloween of the 60s, I would say.
Mm.
Like it's like that movie's kind of like similar sort of example, just like a cheap movie made on like a low budget, but just made somehow confidently enough that it just stood the test of time, you know. I like this more than Halloween, but I still, you know, but like that I would kind of compare this to a little bit. So
Yeah, I'd give it a solid three and seven quarters.
nice. Yeah.
Just because the follow up is probably I would even like go to four. I'll give it a four anyway. Yeah, fuck it. Just because it was a genre defining kind of feature and done really competently as well, not just some
Yeah.
start of something cheesy. Like yeah, like the slasher flicks.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think I'd probably give it about a 4 too. Just overall, just like definitely like really easy to revisit, and just I don't know. I feel like it's just kind of the definitive sort of zombie film for at least the time, and it does do a pretty good job of sort of encapsulating like a lot of what like we sort of associate zombie movies to be. So, um, you know, I wasn't crazy about all the characters, but I mean, with a movie like this, it's not really about whether you like the characters or not. It's kind of more about like sort of the whole survival situation. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I've always enjoyed it. So,
yeah, it's good.
yeah. Um, so let's see. So I guess the follow up to Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead. I want to say 78. I'm pretty sure was when it came out.
Um, I thought 76 maybe, but
Oh, maybe you're right.
no, it's 78. Yep, 78.
Oh, okay, cool. So 78 for Dawn of the Dead. And this one, I would actually probably call this one more of like a zombie epic. Like that's what it kind of feels like to me, is a zombie epic.
Like, how connected are these movies as a trilogy? Is it actually like set in the same universe? Or is it just
Basically,
loosely? I don't know. Because
um,
it's not definitely not 10 years later that this movie
no.
takes place. It's
I
but
think this takes place at the same time as Night of the Living Dead. So.
okay. So, but I mean the movie. It's also then also kind of confusing if it's definitely like 70s stuff is in it, like
Yeah,
color TVs and vehicles that were from that era and stuff. But
yeah. I mean I can sort of let it go only because like Night of the Living Dead, at least for me, was kind of it was vague enough about about its location that, I mean, I know that it was filmed in Pittsburgh, but I could imagine in the country, like in the middle of nowhere, on some farmland somewhere in the late 70s, maybe it would be pretty close to how Night of the Living Dead was, depending on like the region.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
I'd also say like
I
with
don't know.
the tech kind of stuff, like they had the radio that they were using and the little crappy black and white was just the way it kind of presented itself with that source of information. Whereas Dawn of the
Yeah,
Dead, we get an intro immediately. It's apparently taking at least a couple weeks after the outbreak. I remember that
yeah,
being tossed around in the news because it starts out in the newsroom of people trying to get out information. The main
yeah,
characters are one of them's like the pilot for their traffic control
yeah,
broadcast, and one of them's like a producer, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Basically, I mean, I mean, the thing is, I think of Dawn of the Dead as kind of being a bit of a dystopian type of movie anyway, like thematically and also just in its style. Um, so I mean, maybe you could say that they're like thematically connected. Maybe if they aren't in the same world, then there's at least a thematic connection. So, but
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean,
I think
I
they're in
think
the
in some
same
ways,
world. Yeah, if you
yeah.
can.
I mean, I do feel like they also very depict very different types of America. Like, I feel like Night of the Living Dead is kind of more like rural America. Dawn of the Dead is kind of more like maybe middle America or like more like
Suburb.
populated. Yeah, and then like Day of the Dead, that seems more like South, like I get like Florida vibes type, you know. Um, but but I Dawn of the Dead, out of these three films, Dawn of the Dead's probably the one I've seen probably the most, I want to say.
I've seen the
Um,
remake more, I'm pretty sure, than this.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I like
the
the
remake
remake
is
a lot.
interesting. Yeah, the remake is definitely interesting. I liked what the remake did. It was very very different, like
Yes.
very different. Um, but it was cool. It had a little bit more of a, I don't know. It took a little bit more of a conservative sort of angle to it, as far as like the characters kind of being more about having being resourceful and having it be like a survival type of thing, rather than them getting kind of wrapped up in the consumerist sort of world that they create, and the colors and the just obtaining materials and all that. I mean, because this movie, I mean, if there are any issues with it, it's probably how heavy-handed it is about
Mhm.
the
And
consumer.
I liked
Yeah,
how the remake just as the movie in general, just how it starts off from 0 to 60 real quick.
yeah,
Whereas in this one, we're already in the midst of an ongoing thing. Like chaos, like the newsroom is just a complete disaster. People are just like throwing shit at the broadcasters and
yeah,
like handing off the cameras to whoever's standing next to them. Like,
yeah. It's completely out of control.
mhm.
It's just pure chaos. And actually, I would actually have to say this, for me personally, the scariest scenes in this movie were like the opening scenes and the ending scenes. Um, and that the opening scene in the TV station in particular, like that really set the tone of the movie like really
Mhm.
well. Just having all those people panicking in this area where these are the people that are supposed to be providing information to the public, and just having them like not even being able to handle like this like plague that's just kind of reshaping the nation really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, that was scary. That was really really scary. And two of the main characters, you got Fran, who you kind of later on in the movie find out is pregnant. And the first shot in the movie is her sleeping, so you can tell she's been dealing with this bullshit for a while. And her husband, I think it's David. No, not David. Steven.
Even
Steven. Okay, yeah. Who?
Flyboy.
Yeah, Flyboy. Yeah. Who? Um, I over the course of the film, you kind of start to sort of realize has a bit of a screw loose. But at that point in the film, at the beginning of the movie, he's like, "We have to go. There's nothing here. Like this. I mean, I already know somebody who's got a helicopter. We could meet up with them, but we have to leave now. Like we can't waste any more time." So, so there's a bunch of stuff going on at the beginning. Like there's that happening, and then like there's also that whole crazy thing where there's like there's that police corps
Yeah,
who
some
are
type
like
of police SWAT military thing. They're clearing out I don't know what it was.
Section 8 housing.
Yeah. And at first, because at first just people just start like coming out of the doors blasting at the cops like gangsters do or something, like some type of gang does, and then they quickly subdue them, and then they just start going through, and you think it's okay. They're being somewhat like, yeah, they're being, forceful, but within situation guidelines.
Yeah,
One dude just starts blasting everyone.
yeah.
He
That
just
one
kicks
guy who,
down, yeah, he just kicks down doors and starts shotgunning anyone that's in.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, he just loses his mind completely.
Yeah.
Which is also terrifying to see, like the police go nuts and just randomly start blowing people's heads off and stuff. And so they have to take him out. Like who the guy in the gas mask.
I think the main. I think just Peter, was it right? Peter is the main one.
That's right. Yeah, Peter, who's played by
our main boy.
The dad from Kenan and Kel.
Oh yeah, okay. It is. That's funny.
But when they're going into the apartment, it slowly escalates because as they go further and further down, that's when they start running into more trouble.
So. There's that one priest with one leg that like gave him a bunch of like the zombies, I don't know, last rites or whatever, and you see like the two main cops that were following the rest of the movie.
Yeah, Roger, I think the other one's named.
Yeah, Peter and Roger. Yeah, Roger was the other one, and they're in a cage just eating. I don't know who they were eating, because they eat humans but not themselves. So I don't know how they were getting fed, or if it was just like a fresh body that was thrown in there somehow. But they were just
maybe the priest was feeding them. I don't know. It's kind of implied.
He was missing a leg.
Yeah. It's gnarly. Yeah, there's all kinds of sick zombie shit going on. I think at one point one of the SWAT members ends up just blasting himself. Like, but eventually though, Peter and Roger end up actually like getting to that helicopter that Steven and Fran were getting to. And
I don't know how that worked out either, like because they like it was in that basement. They were like, yeah, let's fucking ditch these cops and everything and go our own way. And they run into like another group of survivors that are like taking a boat out, which is funny because that ties into the remake. But they bounce, but I don't know how they got to the roof of because I assume that. Or did they fly somewhere to refuel or something like that? I guess they must.
Well, they do eventually have to. Yeah, they do have to fly. I mean, at first they do get to a station at some point to refuel, but there's hardly any fuel there.
Oh right, yeah, that's how it happened. Because they did fly through like the country and saw a bunch of nothing.
Yeah,
slash zombies around. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also when you find out how like that Steven is kind of trigger happy a little bit because he almost shoots Peter. So.
He's also just incompetent too. We find out throughout. He's like well-meaning generally until the end, and then just incompetent also though.
Yeah, he wants to help, but he's a lousy shot,
But he's the pilot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why he's useful. It pays to be a pilot in these movies, or to know how to pilot. There. So, yeah. But let's see. That was also kind of around the time that there's that really clumsy moment where Steven ends up having to fend off that one zombie, and then Fran just kind of stands there in shock, waiting for another one to crawl near her. And then that was also around the time that Peter ends up having to shoot those kids, which was kind of a shocking little moment there.
Oh yeah, he blasts them too. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no kill like overkill, right?
Yep.
Um,
And it was just because it's two kids too, and it's like ones he just unloads into. It's like, goddamn.
yeah, it's pretty brutal. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, and then there's I think that was also around the time that you got that one zombie whose eyeball was kind of hanging out of the side. And then there's that other dude with the helicopter blade. Like,
Yeah, the helicopter blade was the one I was thinking of. That
yeah,
he just walks like he like steps onto like some boxes and then it just cuts the top of his head off.
yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Crayola colored gore effects in this movie, like they actually do kind of add an interesting sort of style and charm,
Yeah.
So it kind of reminds me of like a graphic novel or something, it's like not quite reality, so and and as they're taking off, like they're concerned about how well they'll be able to do on the ground against the zombies and whether or not they'll be able to survive. And then of course Peter makes the point that it wasn't a zombie that almost shot his head off,
Yeah.
because yeah.
And they're also making the point that like the police and the military places that they might want to go and refuel at would not let them out again. So
yeah exactly, and they don't want to land in the country because there's already a bunch of hunters out there hunting zombies, so obviously like probably best to not even go near there. So yeah, eventually they do land on the rooftop of a mall.
which has a helipad on it too. I noticed some random mall with a helipad. I don't know.
Yeah. This is a real mall.
Yeah.
And the mall ends up being pretty much where the rest of the movie takes place. Because I mean, obviously a mall, it's a resourceful place.
Did it have fuel too there? I think they fueled up. Yeah, they must have had some fuel there.
I'm gonna hope that they at least took fuel with them or found fuel somewhere. I'm sure. I mean, I know that there was food and water, so.
And they flew a lot too during the course of the movie as well, before they even took their final flight. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, and also Fran, she needed to learn how to because throughout the course of the film, the Fran character, she does express interest in learning how to fly the helicopter in case they needed to. In case they need to escape. And
I mean, both the cops do too as well. They're like, yeah, we should probably all know in case you're dead.
Yeah,
but exactly. Fran does get taught a bit, how to fly it.
Yeah. And the writing was on the wall there because we all know that the Flyboy character is more than likely going to make a mistake at some point.
He's a bad shot and just an idiot.
Yeah, just generally incompetent, like you say, But as soon as they get to the mall, their first step is to try and clear out the top floor, which that doesn't end up going too badly. Although there is a bit of a issue that they have. Well, okay, I know that there was that whole thing where Steven gets kind of stuck in that room with the pipes where he tries to shoot at the zombies, but the bullets are like ricocheting.
That was stupid as hell.
Yeah.
It shows how incompetent he was,
Yeah, because he wasted all of his bullets and then he almost gets killed, So
because he was like just shooting at the shadows and nothing.
Yeah.
And then when he actually had a good shot, he was out of ammo.
Yeah, it's like, goddamn, but meanwhile, Peter and Roger, they managed to actually pretty much clear out the few that are in there. The issue that they have is that the hallway up to the storeroom is overrun, so they have to barricade it. And it does actually end up being a problem kind of early on. Like they they have to learn pretty fast here, because like very early on they leave the door like more or less uncovered, and one zombie, the Hare Krishna zombie, ends up getting in
Yeah,
and almost killing Fran in a
that was
sequence that
funny.
was a little clumsy on her part. It's like, maybe I think she probably could have, moved a little bit faster at putting those boxes in front of the door, but whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
And they did try to make a point of like, we can't lure them back. We have to like make a distraction or something before going back into that room. But that guy just kind of wandered in.
yeah, exactly. So
He
barricading
just
it is
happened
not.
upon it, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, slowly they managed to actually open up more of the more and more of the mall, to the point where they actually managed to get all the zombies on the lobby outside, or at least outside of the lobby, not outside of the front doors, but outside of the lobby area. So,
Yeah, they
um,
basically clear out the whole mall and have free reign basically, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Eventually, yeah.
yeah. I mean, it takes a long time, and unfortunately, eventually Roger does get bitten. Um, in a way, like, the thing is, at that point in the film, he does kind of get a little bit too loosey goosey with what he's doing. He gets a little bit too comfortable and casual with his zombie killing skills, and gets
You could tell
overconfident.
he's getting cocky, yeah.
Yeah,
He got too
and he
cocky.
ends up, yeah, and he ends up making a series of rather unfortunate coincidence, or not coincidence, unfortunate mistakes.
It's because
Um,
yeah, he was getting too cocky, and like
yeah,
Peter was like, tell him to get a grip, man.
yeah,
You're gonna fuck up, and then he
yeah.
does.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not only endangering your own life, you're endangering mine as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is
and yeah,
during a sequence where they're barricading the outside with semi trucks.
oh,
Um, he forgets like his hot wire bag, like that he was hot
yeah,
wiring the machines. He's like, oh shit, I need to go get that. And
hmm,
he leaves the door open to the truck like an idiot,
yeah,
like because yeah,
yeah, and yeah, he gets bitten a couple times actually.
yeah,
So yeah, that's pretty bad. And of course, shortly before that, he's got that great line, "We got this, man. We got this by the ass."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And that was one instance too where the helicopter was, flying around watching them the whole time. I was like, so this seems like a waste of fuel. Because I mean,
yeah,
sure to drop them off because the trucks were like in a parking lot far away. Sure, that makes sense. But like, I don't know why he kept flying back and forth because they made multiple trips. I don't know
yeah,
because they had radios. They could have just said if they were in trouble, come pick us up. I don't know. I don't
yeah.
know if he needed to be like they fully watching the whole thing to conserve gas at least. But
Yeah, I mean, eventually the radio broadcast systems all just go off.
yeah, but they had walkie talkies. Is what I'm from some
That's true.
supply stores. They had a lot of supplies there. Yeah.
They did, and that's actually why they end up kind of staying there. Instead, like, at first they kind of they kind of plan on staying there temporarily, but then they get a little bit too comfortable staying there, and they end up kind of just turning it into their shelter. Which, it's only a matter of time before that shelter becomes a freaking claustrophobic nightmare. But the movie does take its time getting there.
It does happen. Yeah.
Yeah. But unfortunately, with Roger bitten, that means that they only have a limited amount of time left before he's useless, and they pretty much he pretty much uses what he has left in
Yeah.
himself to help clear out the rest of the lobby.
Yeah. They wheelbarrow him around.
Yeah, yeah, and that's pretty cool. I mean, so he does help them out quite a bit before he turns into a zombie, but eventually the time comes, and Peter ends up being the one who takes him out. So that's that. It's kind of a bummer because at that point in the movie, like, you have kind of gotten used to him sort of being there, and he is actually pretty helpful. But yeah, unfortunately, he makes mistakes just like all the other characters do. So, um, and then let's see. And then kind of at that point, they mostly just fuck around.
Yeah. There's like a whole like good 10 minutes of them just going through shopping sprees. There's a funny scene where they just take money out, just as, hey, you never know.
Yeah.
They like
He's like,
smile at the security camera.
Yeah. Yeah. But then eventually even that gets tiring, and
yeah, because at that point they basically made an apartment up in that like that loft they had. They did build too just a fake wall kind of thing. Because they figured out the best way to travel throughout the mall was through the vent system.
Yes.
So like they made a drop down ladder they could pull up. And put a wall in front of put a wall in front of the stairwell.
Yeah. And but then it, of course, as time goes on, it does end up kind of feeling more like a prison.
Yeah. It was that great scene where like the Steven turns on the radio and Fran was just like, there's been nothing for days. And so she just goes and turns it off and sits back down to dinner. Then he just looks at her like, just to spite her, he turns it back on. And then she just has a great line of, what have we done to ourselves?
Oh, yeah.
And then that's when I think that's when they start preparing to leave too, actually. Like, I think they like right after they put some supplies in the helicopter and stuff, but.
Yeah, and that's around the time that he does start teaching her how to fly the helicopter too, but they do start getting sick of each other, unfortunately. So, and then unfortunately things get even worse because as time, how these kinds of things go with apocalyptic scenarios and stuff, eventually you get scavengers, and that's pretty much precisely what happens here. And from here on out, I'd say it's about when the kind of central message of the film sort of starts to take hold, because basically, Peter and Steven, they decide to survey the situation because they do get the call. They do get threatened on the radio by these guys, saying, "Oh, we don't like people. We don't like folks who don't share." And it turns out that these guys are like heavy duty, like angry biker types.
A whole gang of them. There's like, they say there's only 3 of us, and then they immediately know that's a lie because they hear just a huge group of them cackling in the background and shit. And
and you got one guy played by Tom Savini, who combs his mustache. It's pretty funny,
Yeah, with one of those switchblade mustache or switchblade combs.
He looks more or less the same in this movie as he did in From Dusk Till Dawn when he played Sex Machine. That's pretty funny. But yeah, pretty vicious biker gang, pretty nasty group of guys. And they show up immediately just leave the doors wide open and let the zombies in, which doesn't end up being a problem at first. But as we know, once you get more and more and more of them, eventually things start getting a little too crowded.
Because they were competent. So that's one of the things that Peter said is they know what they're doing. They've been doing this for a long time, and they were like just fucking with they were pieing. They were just playing with the zombies. They were like throwing pies in their faces.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And Peter and Steven, they do eventually actually go down and survey the situation, and Peter actually comes to the determination that they're not worth the time.
Yeah, I think they even say like, we're gonna let's I think they said let's open the back storage doors to let even more in. To overwhelm them.
Yeah. I mean, he decides that the zombies are going to eventually overwhelm them, and there's just no point in even bothering to try and just let nature take its course.
And they're just fucking them up and looting still. They're not even caring. They're just grabbing like loot and stuff, like jewelry and everything.
The process takes time, of course, because zombies, they got to work in packs, but it only takes about 12 or 14 of them to flip a truck. So, but unfortunately, Steven decides to be a giant idiot and sticks around and decides to try and fight off some of the bikers.
He gets too territorial. He's like, this is ours. This is ours. We did this.
Yeah.
This belongs to us.
And and that's probably the most heavy-handed moment in the whole film, because at that point it's like, all right, yeah, now essentially, yeah, he's become hypnotized by the colors and the you know and the consumerist goods and the materials and being able to have everything at his fingertips. Like yeah, I mean, he's succumbed to he's become like one of the zombies already, despite not even being a zombie. That's basically what the movie's trying to say. Which is a bummer, because it doesn't end up working out very well for him, because he does end up getting cornered in an elevator and injured. I forget, they either shoot him or stab him. I forget. I think they shoot him.
He does, yeah, he gets shot.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's an inch. He climbs up into like the elevator shaft to hide, and then like they kind of know he's up there, so they just shoot some stray bullets. He gets hit, but like holds his mouth and doesn't let him know that he's actually up there, and then
yeah, and you get this really dramatic moment where he's calling Peter on the radio and saying like, "The elevator hurt." And he knows he's hurt, and it's like this whole thing, and and by this point the bikers are all just getting eaten alive, getting ripped to shit.
Yeah, it's the eating scene of the movie.
Yeah.
The banquet scene.
Which is absolutely disgusting. And you got some real nasty moments where like them sticking their fingers in that one guy's guts and like all sorts of stuff. And you got that one dumb idiot who decides to like check his blood pressure.
Oh yeah, one of those machines. That was hilarious. Yeah,
that was great.
And then it goes back to it afterwards, and it's like just beeping, like overflowing or that. Just like, okay.
Oh man, so funny. Let's see. And also then eventually Steven, he gets pulled down into the elevator too, and he gets a real nasty, like fucked up leg. Like I don't know if they broke his ankle or what happened, but they do something. They definitely
bite him. Yeah.
Yeah, they bite him like a dozen times, and even in the neck, and so he's doomed. But he does manage to shoot at least a couple of them on his way out.
Yeah, because he doesn't get eaten because he shoots them out, and then like the elevator door does close on him.
Yeah,
so he just dies in the elevator.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, Peter hears him on the radio and hears the elevator, so he knows that he's on his way up. So at that point, he knows, oh great, like now we might be running out of time. So he gets back to Fran, and they're like, all right, well, let's just wait and see. But by dawn, he's a zombie. And that's probably the most messed up zombie in the whole, like that's probably like out of all the zombie performances in these movies, and Day of the Dead has a really good zombie performance too, but I'd have to say like that particular zombie performance, with the Steven character Flyboy, like it's so nasty, and it just doesn't get any better than that with the gun dangling off of his finger. And I love that so much.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. And also, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, so throughout they are saying like they're just acting on instinct. Why are they even coming to the mall? It's because of what they did in their regular life.
Yeah,
that's why they're coming back here, and it starts and it pays off after Steven gets turned.
Yes,
because he somehow, well, I mean, what we gathered now is he knows that that's a fake wall is there, and he busts through the fake wall.
yeah, he immediately remembers where their hideout was, and he leads all the zombies right to them. And so the nice spacious dystopian colors of the mall very, very quickly become a claustrophobic, overly fluorescent nightmare full of zombies stepping on stuff and breaking through stuff, and they're just all over the place, and they just overwhelm the entire mall. And so basically Fran and Peter, they have to hightail it out of there. And Peter actually almost kills himself, but
I don't know why either.
Yeah,
like, that didn't make much sense. Like because the lead up there was just a regular like A-frame ladder. Yeah. So I don't know why he just didn't climb up after her and kick the ladder down. There was no way they could follow him, but he like goes
Yeah.
into another room and almost kills himself. Like, but
Yeah.
then at the last second fights his way back and like grabs
Yeah.
onto the helicopter as it starts flying off.
Yeah, that was kind of a weird moment because, like, I so in a way, I sort of understood like where he was coming from a little bit, how he didn't want to like, you know, quick like help or you know, contribute to the quickly depleting resources that they already had or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, I
You're
mean,
just
she's
leaving a
pregnant.
pregnant lady by
Yeah, like,
herself.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
kind of being a shitbag, just deciding to
Yeah.
stay at the mall and kill yourself. Like, but you know, whatever. He changes his mind, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And they managed to get away, but you know, they don't have much fuel, so it's not looking great.
Yep, that's like the last line of the movie. Is like, how much fuel do you have? Not much, or something like
Yeah,
that. And
not
yeah,
much. Guess we'll have to wait and see.
yeah.
Mm.
The endings. So the ending of these movies get progressively more optimistic. At least I'd say
Yeah, yeah, I would
for
say
all three
so.
of them.
Yeah, like this one ends on a, I'd say on an overall downbeat note, even though they do get away from the mall at least. So
But they don't die.
yeah, they don't die.
It's
The
open
only
ended though. It's at least open ended. You could maybe say like, oh, maybe they made it. Yay!
yeah, I
But
mean, it's possible maybe they went back to that fueling station.
never know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say. But either way, I mean, it's a pretty cool little movie. Like the way they sort of show how like the setting kind of becomes like how like the characters get familiarized with the setting and how like in some ways the audience sort of becomes familiarized with the setting too. Like that's one thing I didn't get from the Dawn of the Dead remake was like that mall felt so much more like immense than this one, you know. This one felt relatively small in comparison, and you know,
Mhm.
and even though like this one had an armory and it had like the usual kind of resources, it felt like the setting of the Dawn of the Dead remake, it just felt like the resources felt more infinite, I guess, from my perspective, you know. So, I mean, I haven't seen the remake for a while, so I guess I'd have to like give it a
Yeah, I haven't
rewatch.
seen it either. I was gonna try and rewatch it before this, but I
Yeah,
didn't. Yeah, I didn't have the time.
yeah, it'd be fun to rewatch though.
Yeah,
And actually, there is a remake of Night of the Living Dead, and so maybe it'd be fun to watch the remake of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. And there's a couple of remakes of Day of the Dead, but
Mm.
neither of them are really any good, from what I understand. I mean, I've seen a couple clips, and
Oh, really?
yeah, I'm not super eager to. But I don't know. Maybe we could do it.
It exists, so
It
it's
does
an
exist.
option.
Indeed, it does exist at least. So, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Like, because I guess I sort of as time goes on, I sort of get a little mixed up on it a bit. Mainly just because I get a little sort of frustrated with like just all the dumb decisions that happen at the end. But you know, that's like I'd say out of these three films, it's the one I find the least scary. But in some ways, I would also argue that it's probably the most well made and the most
Mhm.
polished of the three. So
Definitely the best film of the three, I think.
yeah,
Um, I don't know, and like I always when I because I watched this after the remake, and I thought, oh, the
Mhm.
remake was better, but that was when I was like a teen, just in like in
Yeah,
high school and shit. And I was like, oh yeah, it was action packed and all that kind of stuff. But I do like revisiting this one. I was like, oh, this was a lot. Like I liked this slower setting, like the mid chunk of them just chilling out, getting comfortable. Kind of
yeah,
sets the tone for the ending of them being prison. Like it's like, oh, we're prisoners now in this thing, and then just all hell breaking loose eventually, of course, as it always does in these movies. So
yeah. Yeah, like I feel like that build up actually makes the ending a lot scarier, you know? Like and
Mhm.
I really do find it like I really find those last scenes like really haunting when they're all when all the zombies are wandering through the mall and they're going up the escalator that's trying to go down, and like and that weird like music is playing and stuff. Like it's just got a creepy, weird feel to it, for me. Just
Yeah, especially since like they did show a lot of it, like they were having nice dinners and skating around on the ice rink, and it was all cleaned out and everything, and then like the end is just it completely swarmed again. It's like
yeah.
the futility of it all.
Oh God, yeah. They're right back to where they started, basically, minus two. So
Mhm.
yeah. The makeup effects were really cool.
Yeah.
Like you could tell that they're dated and kind of cheap, but I don't know. I really don't mind the cheapness. I really don't. Like it doesn't really annoy me as much as it does a lot of other people. So,
Mhm.
like I can think of a lot of worse examples, I think. So, I don't know. This movie kind of felt more like a comedy to me in some ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in some ways. Like, I mean, they were definitely like it was definitely intentionally trying to be horrific, but I thought like it had like a good dry sense of humor,
Mhm.
So
Yeah, a more lighthearted take, I guess, and
yeah,
for most of it.
yeah. I mean, it's comparatively lighthearted to the other two films in this trilogy, I would say. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 5, I'd probably give this like pretty close to a 5. Like definitely high. I like this more than Night of the Living Dead, so I'd probably give it like a 4.5, probably.
Yeah,
So
me too. I like this one a lot.
yeah,
So I gave
yeah,
4. Yeah, I'll give this one a 4.5. That's I guess.
yeah, yeah. Like I might even give this a 5 on a good day. It really depends. I mean, it's not the type of movie I want to like watch too many times,
Yeah,
just
I'll
because
give it a 5 just because it is good,
yeah,
start to finish. Like
yeah. It is a little bit of a it does kind of it is something you do kind of have to devote yourself to. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoy it a lot, and I love
mhm.
watching it. I mean, it's easy to get into. So,
Yeah,
um,
easy, most easily accessible, I guess. Well, I mean, not literally because it's not on any streaming or anything, but like
right. Yeah.
definitely like for a more broader audience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. It's the Mad Max of zombie movies. It's like the full package and then some. So you got a lot more than just zombies in it. I think that's kind of what's really, you know, what's cool about it is
Mhm.
you got a lot of other little goofy, fun, odd little things, peculiarities. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, definitely a good movie, good '70s movie. So,
Oh yeah.
and then you get to the '80s,
Yeah.
and the '80s, you could tell the attitudes were changing for sure. So,
Times were different, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, you get to Day of the Dead, and I when I was a kid, like out of these three films, this one I hated. Like,
I didn't like this one.
I mean, yeah, go
I
on.
just didn't. I just didn't like it. Like watching it or anything. It was just like the whole feel. Like I don't know what George was doing for this one, but it just felt like way off.
Yeah.
Like it was like what you said. I guess for the crazy, it was very aggressive.
Oh yeah.
It was so much like more aggressive from the get go. Like
Yeah.
everyone was just angry already.
Yeah.
Which I
Yeah. I
guess
mean,
could be contributed to the fact that, I mean, technically, I guess if this is in the same universe, I think it probably takes a couple months later
that's my
as,
guess. Yeah.
yeah. So like
I think
everyone's
that's
already
good.
just tired of
Yeah.
this shit and like,
Yeah. Yeah. This is the autumn years of the zombie apocalypse, is what I would call it. So,
the
but
28 months. Did they do a months yet, or was it just
they
the
haven't
days
done
and
one
weeks?
yet. They haven't done 28 months yet, but
Okay.
when they do, it might be like this. You never know. Uh, but yeah, this was the one I hated as a kid. Like, um, it just it mainly just really bothered me. Like, it really scared me. It scared me so
Oh,
bad that I
really?
couldn't even. Yeah, like I couldn't even be in the same room as the VHS tape. Like when I had to like put the tape in a different room somewhere. Like I just couldn't even. I just really was scared of this movie. Like, in like the worst possible. Like it scared me in such a way that I was like repulsed by it. But
Hmm.
I don't know. As time has gone on, like I don't know. This one actually might be my favorite of the three,
No
and I know
way.
that yeah, I know that probably might like, but there's something about this one that has managed to really, I don't know, connect with me in some way. Like, for out of all these three films, this is the one that I find myself the most invested in, and I couldn't really quite say why. It might be because of the setting.
Setting's
Um,
way different, yeah. And so I just want to
yeah.
know, like, just in general, how was this film like? It was just a straight up film to theater, because like the other ones I watched were good quality because of just the way I obtained them as well. But I watched this one on Tubi,
Mhm.
so like the other ones were DV were Blu-ray
Mhm.
quality. So and this one was just I watched it on Tubi, and I could not like tell if it was just because it was through this streaming Tubi
Yeah.
shittiness or just the
Yeah.
way it was filmed as well.
Hmm.
Like if it had a lower budget or something, I don't know. It was just like hard to
Yeah.
watch in that
Yeah.
sense. Like it was real dark in a lot of things, and like I couldn't understand. Like maybe the audio mixing was a little off, but it also could have just been streaming. And maybe if I got a Blu-ray of it, it would have been fine. But
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I watched it on my VHS. I still have the VHS tape that I used to be
uh,
traumatized by as a kid, and
and
I
you
just
watched
watched.
it this time with that? Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. You know, but I know that it is available on Blu-ray, and I would like to actually see this in higher quality at some point because like I don't know, I, I can tell that that out of the three films in this trilogy, like this one probably has like the most sophisticated makeup effects.
Yeah.
But it's hard to tell on VHS quality because the picture's all foggy,
Hmm.
I mean, but it
I mean,
was like
I could tell on
yeah,
this on Tubi, it was definitely the best of, even though I had the Blu-rays of the other ones.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think yeah, Day of the Dead. So yeah, I mean, the first film is kind of about uh how like violence turns us all into monsters. The second film is kind of more about how like being a consumer in and of itself is like being a monster in a way, and how like how one can kind of consume themselves, like self-consumption almost. This one seems to be more of a meditation on like communication breakdown, um because like basically like Day of the Dead, the whole setting is underground, and it appears to be some kind of, I want to guess, like some kind of military base
It was like a
doubling as like a mine.
silo. It was
Yeah.
like a military silo is what the description was, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Military silo. That makes sense.
Yeah, but they were
And
like, yeah, there was that underground with like miner zombies, like
yes.
you know, pickaxe thing, like headlamps on their head, miners. Kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a little confused until I read, like, I was like, what the hell is this place? Until I don't know, I read the
Hmm.
description. They said it was this military silo, like missile silo of some sort, which
Indeed.
makes
Yeah.
sense. Which makes sense with like those elevators and stuff they had.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's a significantly smaller setting than the mall. So it's basically just like a group of people who are really trying to kind of play for territory at this point. You got a group of scientists and a group of soldiers. And the
And a couple
film,
civilians.
yeah, a couple civilians. You got a mechanic who he's like this funny little drunk Irish dude who's just drunk the whole time,
Hmm.
and you get the one guy in the entire base who knows how to fly a
Of
helicopter. So
course, the
it's like
pilot, the Rasta pilot.
yeah, he's like this Rastafarian pilot who right from literally like his first scene, he's already talking about wanting to get the fuck out of here and just go somewhere, like to some island somewhere away from the zombie apocalypse. He's already talking about that like right from the start. So, but yeah, so basically, yeah. So you have a group of scientists, group of soldiers, and a couple of middlemen, and the film more basically charts the final days of this small band of people on the verge of collapse. Basically, just about almost all the characters have lost their mind by this point.
It's been a while. Like the very first intro, like the first scene was a dream sequence of the main character, Sarah or whatever, the scientist lady. She's like in a cell, and it's just like you see the calendar with all the days marked out, and then just a bunch of hands come out of the wall, and she wakes up, and she wakes up from a dream, and like, it's a dream. Okay.
October 31st.
Yeah.
And and at the beginning of the movie, she's with the pilot, she's with the mechanic, and then the other guy who's with them is like one of the soldiers, and it's one that she, I guess, has a little bit of a connection with, like, I guess a little bit of a friendship with, and they go to some kind of Florida city. It looks like. I mean,
it looks like Florida, but I wasn't sure how, by the way they were talking. It was like not even in the States. Almost, I feel like they were saying it's like some type of place, a little like
Costa Rica, maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and
never specified, at least.
Yeah, they mainly go there to look for survivors, which of course there aren't any. All they see is a horde of zombies.
And they were trying to like pick up radio waves too, like see if anyone, but they couldn't get anything too.
Yeah, and you can tell by the city, like the looks of the city, that like it's been bad for a while. Because just everything's just decimated. There's like an alligator
wandering the streets.
Yeah,
like one of the zombies tamed an alligator.
Yeah, that was great. But yeah, pretty creepy. And then when they get back to their base, and they find out that Sergeant Cooper, who was the person who was the head of the military group, he died that morning. And so like Sarah, the main girl, she sees like his grave kind of off in the corner. It's like, oh yeah, Major Cooper, he died this morning. That's his grave. And she gets into an elevator, and as soon as they get in, the military guy that she was just with, who by this point is like on the verge of a mental breakdown, he's getting corralled into having to basically just like navigate these zombies that are kind of working out of this mine that they're trying to kind of keep captive and relocate to the lab, because it's a small band of survivors, and the scientists are trying to kind of operate on their best expertise that they can. However, like
the whole plot kind of is about, or the reason why they're there is the military is just trying to give the scientists support for whatever their research on these zombies. That's what the whole thing is about.
Yeah, exactly. But like the thing is, by this point, it's clear that the lack of progress and the high body count has taken a pretty severe mental toll on everybody. And basically it becomes martial law. I mean, more or less, because this new guy, Rhodes, ends up being a bigger psychopath than the last guy, the characters indicate. And generally it ends up being kind of an uncoordinated effort to really try to corral these zombies into these labs. The scientists themselves aren't working with the best kind of materials, and you get this one dude who in some ways is actually the scariest character in the film. I mean, the Major Rhodes guy is obviously like the top dog psycho, but
Yeah.
you have this other scientist who, I mean, there's a darkness to him that
And they call him like
really,
Frankenstein or whatever. They call him Dr. Frankenstein.
yeah, they call him Dr. Frankenstein, and you don't exactly find out what he's doing right away, but you slowly, sort of over the course of the film, find out that, like, basically what he's doing is he's like using zombies as guinea pigs, and he's got one in particular that he's been more or less taming. Although, you do eventually find out what he's using as an incentive, and it ends up. I mean, the reason the whole situation breaks down ends up basically coming down to a moral argument about what he's doing. But in the meantime, he is managing to actually make some degree of progress with one zombie, although the progress is kind of questionable too, because it's not really clear whether what he's doing is actually like for the purposes of being productive or to satisfy his own sort of ego.
Yeah. Seems like
Yeah,
it's just his own thing that he wants to do. Like, because in theory, like, if what they're trying to do is like find some, I don't know, some way to fix the situation, like what he's doing is taking weeks on one zombie. So how would they do this across millions? Because it's just like training literally like training a dog, with treats to follow commands and not be, and be docile and all that kind of stuff. It's just like literally training a pet, basically. Like, how is that gonna work? Like the others, like the main Sarah it was her understanding she was trying to like figure out a cure type situation kind of thing,
or a way to reverse the process of like turning to zombie.
But like she said, like they say, like, there's a confrontation. I was like, yeah, that'll take years if at best, but everything's broken down. We don't have any equipment or chemicals or whatever medicine, so it's not going to happen anyway. So I was like, okay.
Like, what's the point? Like, what are we even doing this for? Like, that's kind of, and the military soldiers, they also in their own way have a good point, in the sense that if we want to try to reverse this process of like the undead wanting to eat us, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to be feeding them, like in the long run, I would say.
Because they make it clear they don't eat any other type of meat but human.
Yeah.
They try to feed them like beef meats and stuff, and that doesn't work. So it's like, well, you're just gonna run out. We're just gonna have to start feeding them other humans. Is that what you're saying? And yeah, that's what he was saying. Like,
yeah, it's twisted. I mean, that's a horrible predicament. And so like, putting myself in the head of these soldiers, like I could definitely see to a certain degree why they've lost their minds, because if they are viewing themselves as nothing but food for these zombies, like that's the last thing they're going to want to be, is food for the zombies. Of course, it ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy in the end, like their fears of being eaten end up manifesting. But
and it's like a military thing too. Like I could understand, like they haven't gotten word from, they say like they've got no word from DC or whatever for however long. Let's just bail. And they keep wanting to do that, but the scientists keep, dangling a carrot in front of them, like saying, "No, just a little longer. We're supposed to be doing this."
Yeah, I mean, it's really just one scientist, and it's the guy who, I mean, I don't know. Like, at one point, he has like this creepy line where he's like, "All we have to do is tame them to be good little boys and girls, just like we were tamed to be good little boys and girls." And just like you could tell, like there's more going on here. That he's like, he's got some kind of weird bone to pick. It's like that movie Oppenheimer, where there's got to be more going on in this guy's head besides wanting to make a bomb that can like set the earth on fire. You have to be kind of a psycho to want to do that.
Yeah.
The moment in this movie that makes my stomach absolutely drop, though, every time, and the big oh shit moment, I think, was when the Dr. Frankenstein character decides to give his zombie bub guy a gun, and then the zombie proceeds to like load the gun. Like that's kind of like at that. I remember the first time I watched this movie, like I saw that and I just like I didn't feel safe anymore. Like I felt like George Romero might have
really?
actually been like a psychopath.
I was wondering, like, because that was the scene where it's like, okay, what are we doing here with zombies? So like, can they like, are we blurring the lines between what a zombie is at this point? Because like, but I guess it's his creation ish. If you want to go with Night of the Dead being, you know, his the start of the genre, so I guess he has his own creative liberties he could take with it, and but like,
I mean,
he was
the blurring of the lines is creepy though. Yeah, like
and also I just felt it was kind of like, I don't know, weird, like cheesy, forced, kind of in a that kind of, that's how I was looking at it, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, you do have to question the sanity of somebody who decides to teach a gun how to fire a weapon. Oh well, I mean, maybe he didn't teach it. Maybe
he didn't.
The zombie just had memory.
Yeah, because he gave the salute to the he gave the salute to the new captain, and then he's like, "Hey, give me that gun. I'll unload it." And he gave him the gun, and he's like, "He must have had military training if he knows how to salute, right?" So he gives him like the unloaded gun, and then he like tries to shoot the captain, the new Captain Rhodes or whatever.
Yeah, and of course the gun isn't loaded. So, but like, like, I mean that's just another example of just the fact that that this guy is just completely nuts. You know, just the scientist. I mean, and then let's see. And meanwhile, Sarah, like, she's dealing with her soldier friend, and she ends up even having to sedate him because he isn't even able to stay awake long enough to help with the capturing of the zombies.
Yeah, he leads to a couple fuck ups with that. Yeah,
indeed, including one that ends up turning rather tragic later. But before that, after she kicks him out, because like she sedates him and then he wakes up and he gets all pissed at her and starts basically just degrading her. So she kicks him out. She gets pissed off and then starts hanging out with the Rastafarian fella and his little Irish drinking buddy. And they
just like, they have a nice setup too. Like it's like at first you just see like a trailer. That's what do they call it? What was it? The Ritz. Welcome to the Ritz. It just looked like a trailer. But then it opened up and like they have a huge nice backyard with like a little fire pit that they're drinking around, and she's like, I just came here to get drunk. And
they created their sort of artificial paradise, I guess you could say. And she hangs out with them and they get drunk, and he more or less reiterates what he said before about
they kind of get into an argument too there. Like she disagrees with him, like, oh, you just care about yourself. And he's like, even if this wasn't going on or whatever, he says something like that, I'd want to go to it and hang out.
I mean, like his attitude is that all this time that they're wasting it's a waste of resources, and that it's just never going to amount to anything. They're never going to find an answer to the zombie plague. It's doomed. They're just doomed to just work on it forever, and they may as well just be zombies themselves if they're just going to be wasting their time, is kind of his whole spiel. And also he's not an idiot. He's aware that the situation, that their days are numbered. You know, he can read the writing on the wall. He can tell that the soldiers are completely losing their minds and that her life is very, very, very much in danger. I mean, at one point in one of the meetings, he even threatens to have her shot, you know, so.
Yeah, and almost like he wants the other one of these soldiers to do it, like, and he points the gun at the soldier to shoot her. And because it was like a little exchange where like, he thought that the captain was joking, so he does like a little finger bang, bang, ha ha ha, and then the captain actually pulls a gun, and he actually pulls a gun, and I'm like, no, I'm counting to 5, and if you don't shoot her, I'm shooting you. It's like, and then like, oh shit, okay.
I mean, it's very clear that that things are just nobody's going to see eye to eye on anything really.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's one of the heavy-handed themes, because the main Sarah character just basically blurts out multiple times to them, if we could all just get along, this would be
Yeah.
fine. Can't we all
Yeah.
just get along?
yeah, instead of circle jerking or whatever. I forget what she
Yeah.
said. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and of course, her friend there, the guy who's one of the soldier who's her friend, um, the equipment that they're using to pull one of the zombies out ends up. I don't know exactly what happened. It actually doesn't end up being his fault this time.
No, wasn't his fault.
Whatever it is he's using,
Yeah.
like the chain on it wore out or something. Yeah.
Yep.
So it gets loose, bites one of the guys, who in turn
This
ends up
is like
shooting another
when
one of the
everything
guys.
just hits the fan. Yeah, the whole movie
Pretty
starts.
much.
Basically, the bikers coming in is
Yeah.
it's the
This is the
equivalent.
beginning at the end.
Yeah, because like three soldiers die in that one little exchange.
Yeah.
Like one gets bitten, one just
Mhm.
like gets blasted because like he's just like holding the gun trigger and aiming
Yeah,
randomly, and he just sprays one of the soldiers. And
Yeah. And her soldier friend, he ends up having to deal with a bite on his
Yeah.
arm because he kind of gets in the middle of having a fit. And so she ends up knocking him out and amputating his arm, and she doesn't necessarily
cauterizing it as well.
and cauterizing it with a torch. And she doesn't even necessarily know if that worked.
Mhm.
She thinks she got to it in time, but and of course his fellow soldiers show up and they want to shoot him,
Mhm.
which actually probably would have been a good idea on their part. It turns
In
out,
hindsight.
yeah, to say the least.
But
Maybe
they
they
were
should have just gone with Plan A.
Yeah, but they had the back, like she had the backup of the pilot, and
Mhm.
so he's like, they know, like he said, the pilot said multiple times, like they can't kill me. I'm the only one that can get them out of here. So
Yeah,
kind of just there was like a standoff, and then like they just said, all right, I don't want you back up in the labs or whatever anymore, and they just leave them be, and
Yep.
it's like the captain's like, yeah, it's their problem now anyway. So
yeah, pretty much. And they say that they're going to go into the tunnels and not come out the following day. So it's like, okay, whatever. I guess if that's your method of survival. But yeah, I mean, it ends up being a pretty torturous moment for her, and naturally after that, it's more than understandable why she'd be pretty freaked out. And of course, she goes into the lab with another scientist, actually.
I think he's just up there. She goes there with the drunk Irish dude. I forget. I don't know his name. I just called him the drunk.
The drunk guy. Yeah. Yeah. And there was the other scientist is there as well, I think, but I don't think he shows up until shortly after the military show up. But
yeah, because he wasn't down there with them. He just was in the labs,
right.
I think, when they go and meet up with and see what the doctor's up to.
Yeah. And of course it turns out the doctor's up to no good. It turns out he's actually feeding the corpses of the military soldiers that have previously been deceased. So Cooper, as well as the recent casualties, those just go to Bub. So he's using the bodies of the soldiers as incentive. And of course, Captain Rhodes finds out immediately and doesn't take too kindly to it, understandably, because it does kind of imply something rather bad about what he thinks of the soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
So of course they don't even waste time; they just blast him.
Yeah.
And they also they do end up shooting another one of the soldiers as well, right in the back of the head. They just cap him after the helicopter guy refuses to comply with their demands to take them up to the surface, or take them out of the surface. So she and the Irish fella end up basically getting locked in the tunnels.
Oh yeah,
And
right. Yeah, they killed that other scientist that she was close with.
yeah,
Yeah. And then
yeah. Um, and she does manage to take a block of wood into the tunnel, and so they do have that to kind of fend off against the
and a
zombies for a
shovel.
while,
Yeah, because
and a
they
shovel.
they send her and the drunk guy. They find a
Yeah,
shovel and they fight him
yeah,
off with that. Yeah,
yep,
for a
yep.
while. For a while. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a great scene where the one zombie's head gets chopped off with the shovel, like up just like the top of the head above the mouth. It's pretty
Yep.
epic.
Yep.
Meanwhile, oh yeah,
And then I was just saying, yeah. And meanwhile, the pilot, because like the military people are like, we're done here. Let's get the fuck out. Beat the shit out of the
mhm,
pilot. Take his
yeah,
weapons. We're getting out of here.
yeah,
We don't care anymore.
yeah,
Um.
yeah. They confiscate the scientists' weapons, and they make the mistake of leaving them on the floor in the lab. But
Hmm.
yeah,
Yep. And then, but the
so this is
pilot,
when a bunch of different shit happens at once. So
yeah, the pilot actually like uh knocks. I don't know how he gets free, knocks
mhm.
out the dude,
Yeah,
the
he knocks
main.
out Rhodes and steals his guns.
Doesn't kill him though.
Nope.
I don't know why. I would have I would have killed him after what he's been doing.
Yeah.
And then
He probably was just like, I'm not going to be one of you because
yeah,
he just shot the two scientists. So it's like,
yeah, because he did have that moment of reflection. He was gonna do it, but he was like, no.
yeah, yeah,
And he goes into the mines to help the other two.
yeah. And he catches up with them pretty fast, which is good. So and while all this is happening, Bub ends up getting loose and finds Dr. Frankenstein dead on the floor, and actually ends up having a rather profound emotional reaction to it, which I was,
Hmm.
a little surprised by.
Yeah.
Um,
This is why I was like, what are we doing here? I
yeah,
was
pretty
like,
weird.
it's like, okay.
Yeah, definitely melodramatic. But
Maybe I'm too
yeah,
conditioned to the overall genre of zombies being mindless husks of meat. And then
yeah.
like, I don't know, it just felt kind of forced maybe, but it
Yeah.
was an
I,
interesting little, at least the payout was interesting.
it's an interesting idea, and I haven't really seen that kind of thing done in a zombie movie, like since then, where a zombie actually like displays emotion at a human death. Like that didn't even happen in Shaun of the Dead or Fido or any of those movies. But in this movie, it did. So I don't know. That kind of makes it unique in a way, I guess. I don't know. Can you think of any? Because I can't. No. I don't know. Maybe,
Emotionally, not
maybe my
really.
boyfriend's back. I don't know. Does that count?
Emotionally, no, but I think like in The Walking Dead, that Michonne character kind of trained zombies. I mean, she cut their limbs off and stuff and
That's
trained them to walk around with her as zombie repellent, but I don't know if
yeah,
there's any emotion and with from the zombies or anything like that. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, um, but yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, I mean, he finds the guns that were confiscated. So, and we all know what that he's capable of using them. So, that's obviously not going to be very helpful for the soldiers. And to make matters even worse, the fella who had his arm amputated earlier pretty much snaps and decides to go on a suicide bender. He
not even
gets to
like
the
not
surface.
just suicidal, like suicide kill everyone else Bender as well.
Exactly. Just kill them all, he decides, is the best way to go about things. Humanity is not worth saving. So he goes to the surface, lures them all onto an elevator, does one of those, Christian Catholic hand gesture things, then pretty much just lets them devour him while he lowers them down into the military base. And of course, there's naturally just way too many of them, so the soldiers don't really stand a chance. They all pretty much get picked off pretty fast and pretty
Hmm.
horribly.
Yep.
um I remember having like waking up in the middle of the night here, like with the screams in my brain, just like those are some
Yeah.
horrible screams
There
that
was
they
that
let.
one good one too that was where they were pulling his head off and it
Yeah.
just kept getting higher and higher because, like, the voice cord kept getting stretched. So it was
Oh,
like, oh damn.
absolutely horrifying. Yeah,
Yeah,
really, really creepy. There's definitely like incredible makeup effects for
yeah.
sure. They look like really real. Just definitely beats like CGI.
Hmm.
And Captain Rhodes, he gets like by far the worst death in the whole movie, I would say. I mean, like obviously like the three, like the scientist and then the pilot and the mechanic, they managed to actually navigate the tunnels for the most part pretty okay. Like they run out of most of their ammo, but eventually they do get to the ladder and get to the surface. Um, I think the Irish guy ends up drinking the rest of his liquor, and that's about it, really. But presumably they get away.
They
But Captain
do,
Rhodes,
yeah.
yeah. But Captain Rhodes, on the other hand, ends up running into Bub after basically holding himself up in the labs, and of course he doesn't manage to load his gun in time before Bub ends up firing off a couple shots into him, and he gets shot at least a couple more times before the rest of the zombies end up busting through. And luckily there's already some nice juicy bullet sized holes in him that make it a lot easier to rip into his body. And
Yeah.
you get a delicious banquet sequence that
Yep.
is all kind of full of shit and guts and all kinds of delicious stuff. And
And he was saying something too while he was dying, like, I hope you choke on it. Choke
yeah,
on it.
yeah, yeah, he's telling the zombies to choke on them as
Yeah.
he's like
Getting
gargling on his own
eaten,
intestines.
yeah. Yeah, because he gets ripped in half too, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he does. Like basically they all just get ripped to shreds. The one dude, the one guy who he's kind of like the big, tall henchman guy. I think he ends up getting bitten and then just ends up offing himself. But the rest
Yeah.
of them, yeah. Um, and then the movie, I guess you could say the movie sort of ends on an ambiguous note. I mean, I guess it's kind of positive, but it's not clear necessarily how artificial. I mean, like basically the final shots of the movie after Sarah wakes up from having a nightmare of their helicopter escape failing. She's on what appears to be a tropical paradise, and it seems to be day 4 of November. So it's not long after they got out. But it's not clear if they actually made it to a paradise or if it's just like a temporary beach somewhere.
Yeah,
I mean, they
they're
created an
fishing.
artificial one earlier.
One of them, yeah, the pilot's fishing.
Yeah,
The drunk guy's just chilling with some seagulls.
yeah, probably just getting drunk again. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd like to think that they got out.
Yeah, that's why I said like each movie progressively had happier endings.
Yeah,
Like more
yeah,
concrete at least. Yeah.
yeah. It's just kind of interesting too, because like I'd say out of the 3 films, this one probably has the bleakest atmosphere, but ends up
Hmm.
kind of ending on the most optimistic note. So it's got
Yeah.
that going for it.
Yep.
Yeah. And Bub, of course, gives a salute, like a final salute to Captain Rhodes as he's getting
Oh,
his guts
right.
eaten.
Yeah, that was good.
That was funny. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, that's Day of the Dead. And I still find it. I still do find the last scene, like the final part of it, to be pretty scary. But overall, I think I just really, there's something about that underground atmosphere and the whole idea of just like the end of the world, basically just like the last band of survivors, how it all kind of falls apart, more or less due to just very complicated human dilemmas and, descents into madness. I mean, there's just something about that idea that really speaks to me. And I don't know, when it comes to end of the world types of movies, like I can get into stuff like that pretty easily.
Hmm.
So yeah. But I could certainly see like why this one wouldn't be the preferable one to watch, because it is probably the least entertaining of the
Yeah.
3. But yeah, I don't know. I like the vibe. I love the score. Um, and I like some of the cool little new ideas that it kind of plays around with. I like that it does try to kind of question a little bit more, like how human a zombie may or may not be. And even though that idea never really has been explored again in any movies, as far as I can tell, or at least not that much. Um, I don't know. I just admire it for even introducing the idea in the first place, really. So yeah, I guess you could say it's a movie that I like more for its ideas than for its substance,
Yeah.
but I don't know. There's just something about it that just screams 80s. So
Definitely, yeah.
yeah,
A lot of it was definitely hardcore 80s with there's a lot of
yeah.
racism, like
Oh yeah.
blatant racism in it, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely racism in all three of them, but this one is
Mhm.
probably has the strongest amount of it. So
Yeah, I just for me, I thought it was like the idea was interesting of the scientists, military, like far further into the epidemic where
mm,
they have to try and figure out what's going on and the whole breakdown of communication and everything. That's cool, but like a lot of what that I don't know, it just seemed a little bit going too far with the scientist teaching a zombie how to do stuff. It's like, okay, like
yeah,
I didn't mind like at first when we saw him like just opening up zombies and trying to like he was basically took him one apart and said, yeah, he's still functioning, and like,
yeah,
okay, like that's understandable. You're trying to figure out what they are, but like when he's starting to train it as a pet and then it actually starts working, and I don't know, I just kind of was like, this kind of drew me out of the whole like experience. I don't know. I was just like,
yeah,
okay, well, it's a bit cheesy for that, but the rest of it was, solid, a little
yeah,
angry, like everyone just yelling and
yeah. Um, I would say like the makeup effects I would say are probably like the high like the ultimate highlight of the movie.
mhm,
For those like for horror fans that are like faithful. Um, this does have probably some of the most effective like like violent like or at least some of the like most hard hitting out of these films. So although the second film, I mean, I gotta say like those opening scenes and those ending scenes, like the opening scenes in the apartment building in Dawn of the Dead, those really like are pretty haunting to me too.
mhm.
So um but yeah, I I'd probably give this like about the same rating as that I'd give Dawn of the Dead, like 4.5 to 5.
Uh,
Um, yeah, I mean, it depends on what mood I'm in. I'd say as to whether or not I like which one I like more. At the moment, I'm feeling pretty warm toward Day of the Dead, but that's just me. I mean, obviously, I get how like yeah, I get what you're saying for sure. But,
yeah, I'd give it like a 2.5. I don't know,
yeah,
just felt like a little downgrade from Dawn because Dawn was just all around like well made. I feel like this is, I don't know if Romero had less of a budget, or I mean the makeup and everything of course was great, but like there's something about it felt a little off. I don't know. Again, it could have just been the source I was watching it through Tubi, but
yeah. It is also interesting too how the setting is a significant downgrade from Dawn of the Dead.
mhm,
Usually most like horror sequels try to go for more and more and more. Kind of like with the Alien movies, is how like the first film all takes place in one location, and then the sequel, the location is bigger and it's opened up more. But then the third film kind of feels positively medieval in comparison. That's kind of how Day of the Dead is for me. It feels a little bit
mhm,
more medieval than the first two films. Um, so which I guess kind of goes along with the theme of the society degradation and how humans end up kind of are being like the real monsters at the end of the day. Um, and I guess that would probably be especially true with Day of the Dead, I'd say.
Oh
because the
yeah.
zombies in Day of the Dead don't really become too much of a threat until the second half of the film. So
Yeah.
yeah. I would also say Day of the Dead is by far the most unbalanced of the three films. You know, like Night of the Living Dead was cheap, but there was a certain level of confidence in it, in its style and in its structure, and maybe that had to do with the fact that it all took place more or less in one small little like location, and it was like a small group of people, you know, with a low budget. But I think with this one, the ambitions and stuff were a little unbalanced. It doesn't
Yeah.
really make a whole lot of sense that scientists would be doing this kind of sophisticated type of stuff with such stringent resources, especially by soldiers who are all losing their minds. Um,
Yeah,
at
there's a
its
lot
core,
going on with this one. A lot of characters to follow. Like there were so many of those soldiers, like that big husky one, the big like brute. He was funny, but like
yeah,
yeah, there's just a lot to follow. Like the other ones had like just 4 or 5 characters you following. With this one, there was like you had the main four, and then you had a bunch of like everyone else, like another half dozen.
yeah, and this movie was pretty low budget too. It was like it was only about $3 million or so, but it felt overwritten for a movie with that kind of budget. Like,
Hmm. I agree.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, um,
That was
so yeah,
probably what I was trying. That's probably what I was feeling. It was like it's a bit overwritten with all this zombie, again, the zombie experiment stuff. Like,
yeah, yeah, and some of that stuff is pretty like out there as well. Like, and you know, maybe one could look at it as sort of being an excuse to show off like really graphic makeup effects and gore, but um you know, the fact that they are trying to connect it to a certain theme, I don't know, it does sort of feel like the vision is getting a little unwavering. So
yeah, yep,
yeah, I mean, I would say all three films have issues and have problems, but I love the themes, and I love when horror films can try to challenge uh like challenge societal concepts and try to do something political. I mean, all three of these, one thing that nobody could say they aren't is political. They are heavily political.
hmm,
Um so yeah, I don't know. It's a classic trilogy of films, and I'm glad that you watched them. So
yeah. I'm glad I did too. Yeah, it was good stuff.
yeah, yeah. Do you have any final thoughts on them, or
No, still think Dawn of the Dead's the best.
yeah, yeah, I think Dawn of the Dead is the Terminator 2, I would say.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. And the Day of the Dead is Terminator 3. Yeah. Or no, Terminator it's Terminator Salvation. Is that the one with
Salvation,
Christian
Christian
Bale?
Bale. Yeah.
Yeah. Day of the Dead is
Because
not
that
Rise
because
of the Machines,
Salvation
it's
had cool
Salvation.
concept, but it fucked up its execution as well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Got a
Like,
little too big for its britches.
yes. Yes. That's exactly why I was comparing Day of the Dead to Terminator Salvation.
Yeah.
Hmm. All right, excellent. Well, I guess that concludes our discussion on the zombie trilogy, the George Romero Living Dead zombie trilogy. So he did make others. He did make Land of the Dead and Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead, you know, of course, but we can talk about those another day, you know. But for now, there are only two of us, but that's no excuse. We can still take a couple picks for what Halloween themed films to watch, and then Zach's will be a complete surprise. So,
Yeah.
do you want to go first, or do you want me to go
I'll let
first?
you go first because I have 2 choices, and then I'll pivot.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought about going with the Jonathan Lipnicki Little Vampire movie, but I decided that I will save that for another time unless one of you guys decides to choose it. And instead, I will choose Trick or Treat, starring Ozzy Osbourne, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's in it. Not Trick or Treat, but Trick or Treat, like OR.
Yeah.
From the
Trick or
80s.
treat's pretty common.
Yeah, that's more recent. Yeah. That's a good movie. I'd love to watch it, but that's not my choice. So.
Hmm. That makes I don't know my like I also wanted to hear Zach's pick to make because I have two different, completely different picks that I wanted to.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
What is yours? Is it like a comedy-ish thing, or is it like do
Um,
you even know? Or
I think it's a comedy. Here, I'll look it up real quick. I know that it has to do with heavy metal. I haven't seen it, but I ran into it was like at least a couple decades ago. I ran into Steve Bissette, the creator of the Swamp Thing, and he recommended Trick or Treat from 1986.
hmm.
It is listed as a what is it listed as? It's listed as a horror comedy musical or
Oh,
horror comedy music, not musical, but music. So
hmm. This is hard because I do have two I want to see. Let's see. I'll just flip a coin. Let's see if I can do a flip coin.
okay, all right. Well, maybe we could do both. You never know. So it depends.
I'll tell you what they both are.
Okay.
One is Pay the Ghost. Have you heard of that one?
Oh, does that have Nicolas Cage in it?
Yeah.
I was curious. I almost thought about choosing that one actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other one I think is more serious and actually might be a good movie. So I don't know. Boys in the Trees.
Oh, I've heard of that. I actually have heard that's a good one. Um, oh, I don't know. What should you choose? That's a good question.
Right?
I
Nick
guess
Cage or a
I
good
guess the Nick Cage one is like fits more with the theme of the show. But I don't know. Boys in the Trees I've actually heard is pretty good too. So I guess I don't know. Yeah, you could just flip a coin, I guess. So
Okay. I mean, do a coin flippy app. Let's see.
yeah.
Okay. Heads would be Nick Cage.
Okay.
Tails would be. I'm not going to share my screen for this. I'll just
Okay.
flip a few times.
All right.
One, hiding it, and
Yeah.
one more flip.
All right.
Tails,
Tails. Okay.
Boys in the Trees. I don't know. I don't know. I still want to see Nick Cage again. So we'll do Pay the Ghost. Let's just
All
do
right.
Pay
Let's
the
do
Ghost.
Pay the Ghost.
Fuck the coin.
Yeah. Fuck the coin and fuck the boys in the trees. We're gonna
Even
do
though I
Pay the
want to
Ghost.
see that movie.
Yeah, I want to see it too, but maybe that could be a one-off. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's up to you.
we can make that
Um,
one off eventually. Yeah,
yeah.
because it just looks like a good movie overall instead of what we usually do here. So
Yeah. I would definitely be interested in watching it. So 2016. All right. Well, it's on my watch list. So Halloween 1997. All right. Cool. All right. I have it saved. So yeah, maybe that'll just be a one-off, or maybe Zach will choose it. You never know.
yeah, there you go.
All right. Oh, and to just tie everything together, Pay the Ghost is by the director of The Little Vampire.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Isn't that
That's
hilarious?
funny. Okay, yeah. So maybe it was a good
now
choice then.
now I almost want to choose The Little Vampire. No. I'll do wait, what did I choose again? Oh yeah, I'll do Trick or Treat. I'll leave it at that. So so yeah, I don't know. I have
All
a
right.
feeling that this Halloween stuff isn't done with us yet. So, yeah. Oh man. All right, cool. Well, I guess that's everything. So all right. So have a good night, everybody, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, have a good one.
All right. Bye.